what you're hitting on, and especially for leaders, one thing that many leaders or at least founders never get to that they absolutely have to in order to scale their business is the creative time to work on the vision.
Planning, yes.
To think,
yes.
To sit and plan and develop business models and crunch the numbers. You're the only one that can do that at the top-down way that's going to cause a business to thrive. And so to keep our to-do list and our calendars full with all these activities, really our egos are addicted to that, but it's a really immature way of leading.
Yeah.
Because it means that you don't understand the value of stopping and slowing down enough to think and plan and develop to, again, work on it's a cliche at this point, but work on the business, not in the business. And you can be really busy and your ego can be really pumped up working in the business 24/7 for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But you're never going to build a peak performing business.
Yeah.
But it feels a little squishy to go, I'm going to take 3 hours and I'm going to do strategic thought.
Right.
Because it's not as practical. It's not as concrete, right?
Right.
But it's the thing that causes businesses to win. You've seen this.
Well, and it's interesting because it's like we talked about when we started this conversation, because it doesn't have that really tangible, immediate result like making a sale. We often push that to the back burner because we can't see it, feel it, touch it, measure the result immediately. But it's such a good point. And I think it's interesting too because, one of the themes we've kind of talked about here is asking better questions. And one of the questions you can ask yourself to help with that is, do I have to do this? Whatever this is, it could be in your life or your business. Do I have to do this thing, me specifically? And we tell ourselves all day, every day that we have to do things that we don't have to do. We just don't. We use that word, and that is a lie. It is a lie that we're believing and living within, and it's holding us back and keeping us from doing things we actually do have to do, like plan and create and cast a vision that no one else can do for us. And so all these tiny things that could be delegated or could just be eliminated. Yeah. I can't tell you how many things I have on my calendar to-do list that I could just eliminate. I don't even have to delegate them. They could just disappear. I just tell myself I have to do it. And I will, quick sidebar here. I don't know if anybody listening relates to this, but one of the things that I struggle with as a creative person, as a visionary person, a person that has a lot of ideas, like a lot of entrepreneurs are, I will have an idea pop in my head. And this is how the idea starts. You know what I could do? Tardy, I could start a whole new podcast, and it could help specifically people that are dealing with a beekeeping business, and it could like help them and like their specific niche, like their dream, and like I know some people would like it's an idea. It starts with I could, right? I could write a book on this topic. I could spin up a whole new business unit. I could hire 10 new people. It starts as an idea. I could. But after it sits in my mind a while, it somehow, without me knowing, turns into I have to. I have to start this. But I'm sorry. I'm busy. I've got to start this podcast. I've got to write this book, and I've got to hire these. I have to hire these 10 new people. If you would just question your thoughts, if you would just not believe everything you think, if you would just stop and pause and go, do I have to do that? Or is that just an idea that I thought of one day that I then am now holding myself to? Because this creative process where ideas pop in our head and we're inspired, and every idea we think is a good idea is not a good idea, but our coulds turned into shoulds, and they turn into these things that hold us back, that we use as an excuse of why we can't do these other things like planning, because we have to do all these things. Look at your calendar. I'd be willing to bet there's at least 30% of your calendar you don't have to do, you personally.
Well, and it's the Pareto Principle of 80% of the value comes from 20% of the work. And I've struggled with this a lot. I mean, you're reading my mail on things that I'm just like, I've totally done this. First of all, one way I've figured out to challenge this is to tell myself, okay, I'm going to not go to that meeting, but next week, if it just is miserable and everything fails, like I can go back. Dave Ramsey talks about, okay, you can get out of debt, and if you hate it and you're miserable, you can go get back in.
Sure.
So it doesn't have to be permanent. Like I've done before, I've gone on social media fasts. I'm like, okay, just this week, I'm going to take the app off my phone. And invariably, that week leads to several weeks, and I love it. But that initial, like, can I really give this up forever? Like, don't punish yourself with making it a forever thing. Like, try it. Like, see if you can get away with not doing that thing once or twice. And what you're probably going to find is I don't have to ever do it again.
Right.
But you can always go back if you feel like it really is mission critical.
Right. And I think that's, again, back to this theme of seasons, I think when you realize that you are allowed to figure out what's important in a season and say no to things that are not important in the season, when you remember it's a season, you're not saying no to those things forever.
Yeah.
So, for example, this year with the Christy Wright show, I've been very focused on turning the ship, expanding Beyond Business Boutique, launching the new Christy Wright show, launching the Devo and the Planner. Well, those were very immediate things we already had in the pipeline. So we did not spend a lot of vision casting time this year. And if I wasn't careful, I might get discouraged. Go, oh well, we're not visionaries. It's like, no, in this season, we're trying to just get these things out. And now that those things are launched, we actually are casting vision for next season. So you can there's an ebb and flow to your life and business. So for example, a lot of retail businesses just went through the Christmas season. Most likely, most retail businesses, their fourth quarter is their busiest time.
Yeah.
So during that season, they're not probably casting a vision. They are boots on the ground, get extra help in, temporary help, seasonal help, so on, to just get the orders shipped. But that's not how they operate all year long. They just know in this season, we're going to operate this way. And then let's say some businesses, a lot of times summer is a down season for a lot of businesses. That's a great planning time. Summer months, we're going to say, what are we going to plan for the fourth quarter, third and fourth quarter? What are we going to plan for the next year? Maybe start working on some marketing campaigns, social media strategies. They start to work on things that are thinking further ahead, big picture, not as urgent, but still important. They just schedule those important things in a time that's conducive to their business trends and business flow. And so I think that, to your point, when we remember that different seasons have different needs, it allows us, again, to be present and focused on what's most important in that season, knowing it's not forever. Mm-hmm. We're not going to neglect these things forever. We're just neglecting them right now because we're focused on something more important right now.
Totally. Well, and life is too fluid, and especially business. I mean, business is way too seasonal and fluid to just have this stock, like, okay, every week is going to look exactly like this.
It's not realistic.
For my family,
fun.
for my business, for my health. And at the same time, there's a double-edged sword here. I want you to talk about this.
Okay.
I have used the season idea as a total cop-out for completely letting myself go, for example, with my health. So if I go, okay, I don't have time in the season to train for a marathon, then I'm going to drink sodas and eat Oreos every day and go all the way to the other end of the spectrum. Like, there's still things you can do to be intentional, even if you're not all the way volume 10 on that thing in the season that you're in, right? So how do you kind of keep the balance across the areas without going, full tilt just because it's a seasonal kind of aspect?
Yeah, I love talking about some of the tendencies we have as entrepreneurs and business leaders, but I think one of the traits of in entrepreneur DNA is we love to be impressive, and we swing to these extremes. And so we're either all or nothing, in or out, on or off. We're working out every day, or we're eating Oreos by the sleeve. There's no just like, hey, we went for a 3-mile walk a couple times this week. That's not even our part of our regular life. It
just sounds so lame,
it's
right?
so boring. We don't like moderation. We want big, impressive, showy, big splash. And I think to your point, what's dangerous about this habit is that when we're on, we're so on, it's not sustainable. And when we're off, we're not doing anything because this moderation is not impressive to us. And what's interesting is habits are created in the middle. Habits are created in moderation. Habits are created in the day-to-day disciplines that create a better life and help you be the person you want to be and get the results that you want to have in your life. And so to your point, you use the season example of a season where you're just not doing anything. I don't think there's ever a season where you're doing things that are bad for yourself, right? Like, even if you think in terms of personality, like, there's never a season to be a jerk. Sorry, I'm in a season of just being a jerk. Sorry. It's like, no, there's never a good season for that, right? Okay? There's never a good season to, not do the basics to take care of yourself. But it is this less versus more. It's an ebb and flow, and there's the focus might shift to one thing over another. And I think because we are so extreme, it's kind of like that, the way we have that mindset of like, well, if we had pizza for lunch, might as well have wings for dinner because we've already screwed up our day, as if we can only have a perfect day. And so I think that when we start to give ourselves permission, and even it is a discipline to it, of saying, I'm going to make smaller choices, and those smaller choices still have results over time. So I'm going to choose water over Coke, or I'm going to go for a 4-mile walk. Because here's the reality. A 4-mile walk that you do is better than a 7-mile run that you don't do.
Totally.
And you're doing something. Yeah. And I would say, let's take this to the whole family life side of this for a second. It's the similar mindset where we think, well, if I can't take my kids on a Disney vacation, I don't even need to worry about putting them to bed tonight, type of thing. Because like, if I can't do big and awesome, then what's the point? It's like, if we could focus on quantity over quality, it would give us so much more gratitude, so much more pride in the things that we are doing. So I don't know about you, but I would rather have 2 hours with my family on a Saturday where we're engaged and playing and hanging out with each other than 8 hours where we're all staring at a screen and looking at our phones and we're not together. So when you focus on quality time, that's what your kids, that's what your family's going to remember. That's what you'll remember. Hey, like, just go take 2 hours and go do a half a round of golf. You know, go do a 4-mile walk. Go do something that fills you back up, that enhances your life. And it doesn't have to be this big, impressive, huge commitment, lots of money. It's just small things that, that's a Craig Groeschel quote that I love. And this is true in business disciplines, but also life disciplines. He says, it's the small things behind the scenes that no one sees that leads to the big things that everyone wants. A great marriage? Yeah, it's not because he took her on one fancy vacation to Europe once a year. It's because they were connected and communicated in the evenings, because they had a date night, you know, a couple times a month, because they were intentional in connecting on quality, not just quantity, not just the big impressive. So I think this applies to business and life, and it's something we have to a little bit go against our nature as entrepreneurs, because we do love the big and impressive. But if we can, again, train ourselves to appreciate the small things we actually do, we'll do more of them, which will lead to the big things over time.
Well, it's also about consistency. I had to develop a mantra because I was so bad at this. Exactly. I mean, again, you're describing
me too. That's why it's easy to talk about.
But this mantra that I developed is consistency trumps epic.
Oh, that's good.
You know, because epic, the Disney World trip, was almost like, okay, if I do that, then I can be a jerk of a dad the rest of the year. I mean, I didn't really think that, but you know, it's almost like we get addicted and we over sensationalize these big epic experiences or these all out kind of performances, when the truth is, when I was in Texas and I took 5 minutes to FaceTime my daughter, you know, she's connecting going, hey, Dad's showing up again.
That's right.
Dad's showing up.
That's right.
And just because I'm traveling doesn't mean that I can't put some intentionality in there and be consistent. No, it's not the same as tucking her in bed at night. Or we'll still do the Disney World thing or whatever the equivalent is for that. But I think consistency and habits, you've said habits before on this podcast, it's developing those habits to be intentional over time and to be consistent.
Yeah.
And that's really what leads to that momentum that for relationships especially make those relationships feel like they're epic.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting. You make a good point too, because I would argue that the Disney trip, taking your family on a Disney trip once a year, is a whole lot easier than showing up every day. It's a whole lot easier than the emotional energy of showing up when your daughter just wants to talk about a breakup and it seems so insignificant to you at the end of the day, and she just wants her dad to hear her. Or when your son wants to tell you about a new project. Or, you know, I heard a sermon at church recently, and he was talking about service, and he was talking about what true service looks like, how it's not the big impressive, it's the showing up. And he used the example of Jesus washing the feet before he goes to the cross. But I think it's interesting because he said a great line. He said, everyone wants to change the world, no one wants to change diapers. And I thought, isn't that the truth? And it, you know, as I still consider myself kind of a new mom because my oldest is 6. If I've learned anything over the last 6 years, it's that work is easier than home. Work is and it's my children are wonderful. My marriage is wonderful. But it's like, it's hard work to show up for little kids. It's physical. It's exhausting. It's tantrums. I come to the office. I get to be impressive and in meetings and using my gifts, and it's easier. Yeah. It's awesome.
It can be
rewarding.
A place to hide from your family.
Totally. And so I think, to your point, the consistency of showing up, even when it might not be as rewarding, even when it's maybe a difficult season in these other areas of your life, your relationships or whatever those things are, that consistency in showing up is what leads to the results over time that you want. The Disney trip does not lead to the relationship you want. It's the consistency that does. It's the quality that does. It's the showing up for, even if it's small. Maybe you're in a season of craziness at work and you've only got a little bit of time to give. Make that little bit awesome and be there, versus using that as an excuse. Well, since we can't do something big, we're not going to do anything at all. The whole, I've already eaten pizza, so let's go ahead and have wings, throw the baby out with the bathwater mentality. If we could appreciate the consistency, I guarantee you it would not only lead to different results, but you would notice how much our kids and our family and other people notice it as well. They appreciate those things.